Hey everyone, today we're going to tell you a story that will blow your mind. Lori Lucero was in a car accident in 1998 that almost killed him, but Lori had an amazing vision of the future during his near-death experience. It showed a big event that would happen in August 2024. Get ready for a crazy ride full of feelings, mysteries, and some pretty shocking news. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications before we start. That way, you won't miss any of these wonderful trips. All right, let's start.
Hello, everyone. One strange event turned my life upside down, and I want to tell you about it. My name is Lori Lucero. It took place a long time ago, but it still hurts me a lot every time I think about it. It all happened in El Paso, Texas, in the summer of 1998. I was 18 years old and about to start college at the time. There were lots of dreams and lots of options in life. It was just another fun night, you know? My best friend Lucas and I were getting ready to go to a party that night. But in the end, that moment was the difference between before and after in my life. I grew up in El Paso, a lively city on the border with Mexico that was full of life and culture. Even though my parents are from Mexico, I was born in the United States. My family was big, loud, and caring, but I was always the calm one. I liked reading and schoolwork more than anything else. On the other hand, Lucas was nothing like that at all. He was always up for something fun and made the party fun. Even though we were different, we became best friends and couldn't live without each other in high school. I was excited for the party that fateful night in 1998, but I couldn't shake the feeling of worry that kept coming back. I knew things were going to change because it was the summer before we both went to college. Lucas and I were both going to the same college, so we had all these plans. My goal was to become an engineer, while Lucas's was to go to law school. We were ready to take on the world because we had big dreams and goals. That day is so fresh in my mind. It took me way too long to decide what to wear, but in the end I chose a simple shirt that made me feel a little more grown up. Then Lucas showed up, wearing a shirt that screamed Lucas in a big, crazy way. We got into my parents' old red sedan, which they gave me when I passed my test. It had been so many fun times in that car. Would I have stayed home that night if I had known what was going to happen? To be honest, I don't know. What I went through scared me to death, but it changed how I think about life, death, and what comes next. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. First, let me take you back to a normal night out with my best friend. It turned into the craziest, most life-changing event I've ever been through. As usual for El Paso in the summer, it was hot during the day but getting cooler at night. You could still feel the warm desert breeze in the air. Lucas and I left the house around 9 p.m. The streets were already packed with people having fun for the night by going to restaurants, bars, and parties. We turned the car radio all the way up and played some famous Latin music. Lucas began to sing along, but he was way off key. It made me laugh. We didn't care about anything and were enjoying the moment. Our friend's house was on the other side of town where the party was. We didn't have to go very far, but we had to go through downtown to get there. We talked about our plans for the future as we drove. Lucas talked about how he couldn't wait to be a lawyer and fight for people's rights. On the other hand, I told them about my hopes to become an environmental engineer because I wanted to do something to help the earth. Building and street lamp lights flashed by through the car windows as we got closer to the city center. It was 9:37 p.m. when I looked down at the clock on the dashboard. Some things seem to be etched in your mind, which is pretty funny. The light was green for us as we got close to a crossing, so I kept going. After that, everything changed right away. I saw a yellow flash out of the corner of my eye. It was a school bus coming fast at us. It looked like it wasn't going to stop and was coming quickly. I didn't have time to answer. We were laughing 1 second, and then there was a loud crash of metal on metal. It knocked me out so hard that I could barely breathe. The car began to spin out of control, and the world around it turned into a jumble of lights and colors. I could hear the loud crack of glass breaking, most likely the window. I thought it was blood because I felt something warm and wet on my face. Everything was very quiet when the car finally stopped spinning. For a short time only, though. Then a lot of noise came in. Horns honking, people yelling, and sirens far away. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't let me. It took me a while to turn my head toward Lucas. He still had his eyes closed. I tried to shout at him, but nothing came out. It felt like the pain was spreading all over my body as it got worse. My view became fuzzy. Before I passed out, the last thing I thought was, am I going to die? After that, everything turned dark. It could have been seconds, minutes, or even hours that I was out. Everything felt different when I woke up. There was no more pain at all. I didn't even feel like I was in my body anymore. I felt like I had no weight. Though I think I did. I tried to open my eyes but found myself outside of the wrecked car. I wasn't in a place I knew. There was nothing but pure, bright white around me. There was no floor, no sky, and no walls around me. There was only soft light everywhere. There was nothing between me and what I saw when I looked down at myself. It felt like I was made of a strange see-through material that was almost like glass but wasn't stiff. There was no heat or cold in me, and I didn't even need to breathe. It was such a wild and almost unimaginable sense of freedom. There was no sound coming out of my mouth when I tried to call out for help because I had lost it. My body was no longer there. It was just me and my thoughts, nothing else. That's when I asked myself, had I died? Does this happen after you die? I wasn't scared, though, which was strange. Instead, I felt a deep peace that made me feel like all the fear and worry in my life had just broken down. Then I felt it. Someone was there. Even though I didn't see anyone, I knew I wasn't by myself. Though it wasn't really a voice, someone spoke to me in my mind instead of using words. "Don't be afraid. You're safe here," it said. After I tried to answer, I heard the voice say, "You are on the edge between worlds." Before I could even think of a response, the voice spoke again. "It's not your turn yet. You still have a lot to see and learn before you go back." In other words, I wasn't really dead yet. There were a lot of questions going through my mind, but before I could even try to figure them out, something started to move around me. As the white light changed, colors began to appear. As the shapes came together, it felt like the world was being painted right in front of my eyes. I was floating above the crash scene before I knew it. When I looked down, I saw that my car was totally wrecked, and there was glass all over the place. A lot of police cars and ambulances rushed to the scene. A lot of paramedics were running to help. A group of people had begun to gather. It was like watching a movie, but my own death was the movie. I saw them take my knocked-out body out of the car. I saw a bed being used to put Lucas on. It made me want to scream and tell them, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm up here." I knew no one could hear me, though. I could feel a soft force pulling me away as I took it all in. It was time to go, but where? I had no idea. I knew in my heart that I was about to embark on the most amazing trip of my life, or maybe my death. Though I was still near the accident scene, I became aware of someone else being next to me. I turned, or rather, my mind turned, and saw something I will never forget. A being made of light. It doesn't feel quite right to call it an angel, but that's the best way to explain it. It looked like a person, but it was glowing and sending out peace and love. There are no wings or halo, just pure, friendly light. If I had to guess, I'd say this being was about 30 years old, even though it didn't look that old. Maybe that makes sense for something like this. What it was wearing looked like a tunic. It was a soft, glowing brown that made you feel at ease. And its eyes, well, it's hard to describe them. There were two bright spots, but not so bright that they hurt your eyes. It was like diving into an ocean of knowledge and love when I looked into their eyes. Something about the being's soft smile made me feel like they fully understood me and didn't question anything about me. Her long, smooth hair fell over her shoulders and looked like it was made of pure gold. Even her skin, if you can call it that, looked beautiful and gave off an air of pure perfection. When she talked, it wasn't through sound, but straight into my mind, where her ideas blended with mine. "Hello, Lori," she said with a smile. "I will show you the way on this trip." I tried to talk and ask all the things that were going through my head, but I quickly realized I didn't have to. It was like the being knew everything I felt and thought. It felt like we were linked in a way that words can't describe. "You have a lot of questions," the guide said, her voice calming. "That makes sense. After going through a terrible event, you now find yourself in a world you don't understand. Don't worry, though. I'm here to help you and show you things that not many people get to see." I felt a huge amount of love and thanks pouring out of me at that very moment. It was so strong that it hurt, like my soul was crying. In fact, tears, or something that looked like tears, started to come out of my spirit body. "Why me?" I asked her in my head. "Why am I going through this?" It seemed like the guide's light was giving off an even stronger sense of warmth and safety. She told her, "Lori, each soul has its own path. Some souls need this to grow and understand more about what it means to be alive. You were picked because the future will need you to do something big. There is a chance that what you see and learn here will change many other people's lives as well." I was shocked and scared when I heard this. An important part? That didn't make sense. The guide must have felt that I was unsure because her light got even warmer and around me, making me feel safer. She told him softly, "Don't worry about that load just yet. In time, everything will make sense. Just watch and learn for now. Are you all set to start?" I was unsure at first, but then I felt a strange courage rising inside me that I didn't even know I had. The guide got it when I nodded, or at least when I thought about nodding. "Then come," she said with kindness in her voice. "There is a lot to see." After that, we started to move. It wasn't like walking or even flying. It was more like space was moving around us. We were about to start a trip that would change everything I thought I knew about life, death, and everything in between. We were floating through this dreamlike space when we saw the start of something far away. It was only a faint light at first, but as we got closer, I saw that it was so much more than that. It looked like a city, but not like any city I had seen before. It was a city made of light that was alive and moving. Imagine the most beautiful buildings you can think of, but instead of being made of steel and glass, they were made of a substance that looked like liquid crystal and lit up in every color of the rainbow. The buildings didn't look like the ones we're used to. They moved and swayed slowly, like they were alive and breathing with the world. The buildings were linked by bridges of light, and I could see what looked like cars moving gracefully between them. They weren't made of metal or engines, though. They were just energy. "What is this place?" While I was about to ask my guide, he spoke up as if he had already heard me. He said, "This is one of many cities on the spiritual plane. Souls who have finished their journeys on Earth come here to rest, learn, and get ready for their next journeys." I could see moving shapes in the city as we got closer. They were like my guide. They were made of light and had an open human shape. Some people were talking in groups, while others were walking around alone, deep in thought. They did not have bodies like we do. Instead, they took on shapes that were based on their memories and who they were. My guide told me, souls here show up in forms that feel familiar and comfortable to them. I also saw that some of the figures were clearer and brighter than others. When I asked the guide why, he said, "The glow shows how each soul is growing spiritually. The soul gets more developed. Its shape gets brighter and clearer." As we floated by what looked like a huge park, there were whirling forms of energy that changed color and shape all the time instead of trees and grass. It seemed like nature itself was alive and aware. "This is a place where you can heal and start over," my guide told me. "Souls come here to heal after having bad things happen on Earth." Our journey through the city went on. At one point, we went by what looked like universities or schools, with groups of people learning in ways I didn't fully understand. It felt like I was taking in information on a much deeper level than just learning it. The guide said, "Learning never stops. Souls keep evolving and getting smarter even after they leave this world." When we got there, we saw a huge arena full of glowing beings. They were all looking at one center figure that gave off so much light that I had to cover my eyes. "What's going on there?" I asked. That is a very advanced soul sharing what it knows and has learned with others. You could call him a spiritual master, my guide told me. As we moved on, we went by places that looked like labs where spirits worked with energies and forces I couldn't even begin to understand. There were even rooms that looked like art galleries, but the works weren't real. They were made of light and pure feeling and changed shape and color all the time. Expression and creativity are very important here, my guide said. Every soul has the chance to discover new skills and interests and grow in them. As we sailed through this amazing place, I thought one thing was very interesting. Even with everything going on, there was a strong feeling of peace and calm. There was no need to hurry, be stressed, or fight. How is that possible? I asked. On Earth, this busy city would be a mess. I think the guide smiled because I could feel it. Every soul is in tune with their higher purpose here. There is no ego and no need to rule or dominate other people. Everyone is working for the good of the group and their own mental growth. Imagine a society where everyone works together to grow and improve, with none of the problems we have on Earth. I was amazed by the thought. Before we left the city, my guide told me, "Lori, remember that what you've seen here is just a taste of what's possible. There are both beautiful and difficult things on every level of life. This city shows what souls can do when they live together in peace." I nodded because the experience had moved and changed me deeply. I felt like this trip was far from over, though, because there was still so much more to find. As we moved farther away from the City of Lights, we soon came to a completely different scenery. On my left was a huge field that looked nothing like anything I had ever seen. There were bright colors and pure, innocent energy all over the place, making it very beautiful. The sky was a unique shade of blue that was darker and brighter than any other sky on Earth. The clouds in the sky were sluggish and changed colors from pink to gold to lavender. At first glance, the ground looked like grass, but it was actually made up of a lot of tiny lights that moved around like waves on a sea of stars. Each swirl spread a soft color wave across the field. But what really caught my eye were the kids. There were dozens or even hundreds of them running and playing across the field. The sound of their laughter was like music, and you could see waves of happiness moving through the air. "Where is this?" I was totally mesmerized when I asked. My guide told me, "This is the Field of Innocence. It's a place where the youngest souls can rest and get better." When I looked more closely, I saw that not all of the forms were kids. It looked like there were also little animals, like light puppies chasing ethereal kittens and small bright birds flying in perfect circles. "Do all living things have souls?" I asked, shocked by the animals that were shining. My guide gave a nod. "Every thought, every living thing, has its own divine spark. They live together in perfect peace here." Something very touching caught my eye as we watched. A group of light kids were playing with a big figure that looked like a dog. As the kids climbed up on its back and laughed happily, the animal gave off an air of love and safety. The angel said, "That's a spirit guide. It takes on the shape that makes the kids feel safest." We stayed for a while and watched the scenes of pure happiness and innocence happen all around us. I saw kids made of light building castles out of what looked like stardust, and I saw other kids dance in loops making complex patterns of light in the air as they moved. Why do some souls come here instead of the city we visited earlier? To be sure, I asked. My guide told me, every soul has different needs. Some, especially those who have experienced short or challenging lives on Earth, need this environment of innocence and healing to recover. A huge library, but not with books. Instead, it was full of glowing tubes of light that went on forever in every direction. What my guide said kept going through my mind. Every life, thought, and action of every soul that ever was is recorded here. It was mind-boggling to think that this library in the sky held the records of every living thing, from people to animals to plants to microbes. This was home for all living things, no matter how small or far away they were. I looked at one of the tablets, which had a soft, welcoming glow around it. Strange things started to happen as I did that. Pictures started to form in my mind. It wasn't like reading or watching a movie. I felt like I was living someone else's whole life. I could feel their feelings, thoughts, hard times, and victories. I saw every detail of their life, not just as a list of events, but as a very personal and close-knit trip. My guide told me, "This is how the universe keeps track of every soul's journey. It's more than just a list of things that happened. It's the story of growth, fate, and change. The energy of those times is now and always stored here." I was filled with awe. It wasn't just a list of facts. It was the spirit of life itself, kept safe and loved in this lovely crystal room. I couldn't help but think about my own record and scroll. What would it show? Everyone I had ever thought of, chosen, or felt. I was interested and uncomfortable about the idea. My guide knew what I was thinking and comforted me. "Lori, don't worry. This is not a place to punish or judge. It's there to help people understand and grow. Every soul can listen to their song again to learn, think, and get ready for the next thing that will happen. Every event, no matter how big or small, is used in this way to help us grow." I nodded as I thought about how big it all was. This library in the sky was more than just a place to learn. It was a statement about how beautiful and complicated life is. I felt calm as we walked through the library. It was now clear how big the universe was, and how all living things were linked to each other. Every life was a thread in the very large tapestry of creation, and every event was a part of the bigger picture. As we went along, we saw more rows of glowing scrolls. Each one held the spirit of a life lived somewhere, at some point. As we talked more, I couldn't help but feel awe and respect for how diverse and full of variety life is. Each and every soul and living thing had a part in this cosmic dance and added to the story of the world as it unfolded. As we got to the end of one of the hallways, I realized that our time in the library in the sky was almost up. My guide smiled at me as he turned to face me. They told Lori, "Don't forget that you are also a part of this great tapestry. Your life, the decisions you make, and the things you do are all important. They are all things that help the world grow." This made me feel very humble. My journey, which began with a terrible accident, led me to this place, which is very beautiful, wise, and understanding. I saw how the world worked on the inside, and I knew that life would never be the same for me again. As we said goodbye to the library in the sky, I felt incredibly thankful. I never thought there would be so much more to life than there was. Being able to learn new things and have new experiences were gifts that I would always remember. I couldn't help but feel that this was just the start as we moved forward. There were still more surprises, lessons, and beautiful things to find. Parts of what I had seen were still very clear in my mind. The library in space gave me a glimpse of the huge, complicated web of lives and events that made up the big plan of the universe. Every soul's journey, including mine, was an important part of that tapestry and helped the development of life. As we got farther away from the sparkling crystalline structure, I thought a lot about what I had learned and seen. I felt responsible when I thought about how every action, thought, and decision was written down, not as a judgment but as a way to learn and grow. Seeing that my life had meaning beyond the physical world I used to live in made me feel both strong and humble. I looked at my guide. "What happens next?" When I asked, I could feel the weight of all the things I had learned and done. Even though I knew there was more to come, I wasn't sure what it would be. My guide told me, "Lori, there is a lot more to see." Their voice was soft but full of promise. "You have seen the essence of life, the beauty of creation, and how everything is linked to everything else. Now you need to understand the balance, the two sides, that is in every soul and every choice." Suddenly, the calm light around us started to change. The air became thicker, and the energy changed in a subtle way. Even though it wasn't scary, it was different, more serious and real. We were getting closer to another level of life, one where things seemed more important and decisions had more weight. The land around us started to take shape, and I found myself at the edge of what looked like an old forest. Tall trees with bright leaves grew high into the sky. Their roots went deep into the ground and got twisted up. As if this place held deep secrets about life itself, the air was heavy with a sense of history and weight. This is the forest of reflections, my guide told me. This is where souls come to face the darker sides of themselves, like their shadows, unhealed wounds, and the decisions they will have to make in future lives. It is a place where you can really think about yourself and change. I got a chill of excitement. There is happiness and purity in the spiritual world, which I learned from the city of light and the field of innocence's bright, perfect beauty. Now, though, I was being led to face the difficult parts of the soul's journey, the problems, the battles, and the darker sides that everyone has to face in order to grow. As we went deeper into the bush, I could feel a change happening inside me. Feelings I hadn't had since I got here started to come back. Questions, fears, and unresolved pain. It felt like this place was pulling them out, making me face parts of myself I had pushed down for too long. My guide told me in a soft voice, "You are ready, Lori. Ready to face these parts of yourself? There are flaws in everyone's soul, no matter how good or advanced it is. You can only grow and become wiser by facing your problems and working through them." Again, I took a deep breath, or at least tried to feel like I was taking one, and I moved forward. I knew this was a very important part of my journey. I had seen the holy place where souls could find light, happiness, and purity. Now I had to face the darker parts of my soul, my fears, my mistakes, and the lessons I still need to learn. As we went deeper into the bush, I knew that this was the time when things would really start to change. Find the balance between light and dark, happiness and sadness, progress and failure. This helped me understand not only my own journey but also the meaning of life itself. I would never forget what I went through, and I knew it would change the way I lived my life from then on. My guide took me to a place that felt very different from what we'd seen so far after we left the beautiful celestial library. It felt like I was floating in space with stars and swirling clouds all around me. "What are we going to see now?" I asked, feeling both excited and worried at the same time. My guide told me, "Now, Lori, you'll see into the future. But remember that things can change. What you'll see are just possible outcomes based on what people choose as a whole." The space around us started to change before I could ask more. We thought we were watching a 360-degree show, but it was much more real. Scenes sped by in front of my eyes, taking me back decades or even centuries. I saw futuristic wonders like towns that float, cars that fly, and people who can teleport. But I also saw terrible things, like wars, natural disasters, and world pandemics. There was a lot to learn. My guide saw that I was getting too much information and said, "Let's focus on a specific point. Focus on August 2024. When I turned it on, the fast-paced scenes began to slow down. The world looked like it was in a lot of trouble, and it was summer. In big towns, there were protests where people wanted things to change. Leaders of the world were crowded together and arguing very strongly. Then, a big event took place, either a natural accident or something that people did. It made everything go crazy. There was then a start of something very strange. It began with people from all over the world, of all races and countries, getting together. It was like this disaster woke everyone up. "What's happening?" I asked, completely interested. "What you're seeing could be a turning point for people," my guide told me. "A moment when people might realize they need to unite to overcome their challenges." As I watched, amazing new technologies, ways to clean up the oceans, and medical breakthroughs that cured diseases that were thought to be irreversible were being made. But what really struck me was how much people had changed. People were more aware. They felt like they had a common goal, and it was unlike anything I had ever seen. "Is this really going to happen?" My voice was a mix of hope and worry as I asked. "Like I told you, Lori, the future is not set in stone," my guide answered. "What you're seeing is one of many options, a path that people could choose to take. It all comes down to the decisions people make every day." As I kept watching the scenes, I saw progress in our understanding of consciousness and the growth of skills that seemed supernatural at first. As space exploration grew, people started living in colonies on other worlds. But the future wasn't perfect. There were still problems and issues. But the way people dealt with these issues had changed in a big way. "Why am I seeing this?" I asked my guide. "Why do you have to show me this future?" Before replying, my guide seemed to think for a moment. "Every soul that goes through something like this has a reason for doing it. Some people are meant to make big changes in the world, while others will have a smaller but still important effect on the people around them. What you are seeing is a reminder of the possibilities that exist, not only for people in general, but also for you personally." I started to understand what it all meant. Should I try to make these things happen when I get back? If I get back? "Well, not really," my guide said. "It's not your job to make a certain future happen. It means to be aware of your life and make decisions based on love and understanding, and to encourage other people to do the same. Changes that are very big can sometimes start with small steps." Thoughts of the future started to fade, and we were back in the empty space of space. I kept quiet and thought about what I had seen. My guide told me, "There's one more thing you need to see. Something closer to home." As the stars changed positions, a new scene emerged. I saw myself speaking to a big crowd in a hall when I was older. I felt like my words had an effect on the crowd, even though I couldn't hear them. "Lori, this is just one of many possible futures for you," my guide said. "A future where you can use what you've learned to help other people and bring about good change." The scene changed again, showing different sides of myself. As an artist making deeply moving works, as a teacher working on environmentally friendly technologies, and as a scientist researching sustainable technologies. "Remember," my guide said as the pictures went away, "the future is not set in stone. It's up to you what you do with the information and skills you've gained here." I kept quiet because what I had seen made me feel heavy and responsible, but it also gave me a strong sense of hope and purpose. No matter what my part was in the big picture, I was ready to accept it. Just as the powerful experience of seeing into the future ended, I felt a slight change in the air around me. I could feel that our journey was coming to an end, as the vastness of the universe started to fade. As soon as I opened my eyes, the light made me blink several times as I tried to get used to being back in the real world after being in the spiritual world. It felt like stepping from one world into another during the change. While I was lying on a bed, I could smell the clean, sick hospital. I could barely make out the faint hum of medical equipment and the murmur of people far away. The dull but persistent pain slowly came back, reminding me of the crash. The lightness I felt in the spiritual world was very different from how heavy and cumbersome my body felt. When I tried to move, my body felt weak and wouldn't work with me. I was getting scared, but I pushed myself to calm down. I remembered what my guide had said. The change might be hard at first, but it was a normal part of coming back. It was hard for me to remember the details of my trip as I lay there. It was like sand was slipping through my fingers. Still, the deep sense of peace and love that I felt in that moment stayed with me. The kindness and support from my guide were still there, even though I couldn't remember what we had talked about. I turned my head a little and saw a nurse coming toward me. She had a worried look on her face. It was a soft voice that said, "Lori, you're awake. For a while now, you've been in and out of consciousness. We were scared about you a lot." My throat felt dry, and when I tried to speak, my voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "Hey, Lucas, how are you?" I asked, even though it was hard to find the words. It made the nurse's face soften with happiness. "Lucas is stable. He's getting better. You both have been through a lot, but now you're safe." I closed my eyes for a moment to take in the news. A wave of relief mixed with the pain that was still there. The trip I had taken seemed like a long-ago dream now, but it had a big effect on me. I knew that what I had learned and seen would affect the rest of my life. The nurse started to change the monitors and give me some medicine to make me feel better. As the medicine started to work, I felt a calmness that reminded me of the peace I had felt in the spiritual world. Even though my trip was over, the lessons and insights I had gained would stay with me. I promised myself that I would always remember the love and light I had felt, and bring that into my life, no matter how hard it got. I held on to the hope and determination I had felt during my trip as I drifted back into a lighter state of mind. Even though I didn't know what the future held, I was ready to face it with a new sense of purpose and knowledge. As I got used to my new life again, it became clearer how much my experience had changed me. When they came back from the other world to the real world, it was a shock, but they felt more purposeful and clear afterward. The first few days I was back home were a blur of getting used to my new view. I came back to the simple pleasures of life and appreciated them more than before. It seemed like every talk and every sunset had more meaning. The noise and activity that used to take up a lot of my time now seemed unimportant when I thought about the deeper relationships and beautiful moments I had grown to value. Even though my injuries were still hurting, I made an effort to live each day with purpose. I gave my time to local organizations, talked to my friends and family with more understanding, and jumped at the chance to get to know people better. Focusing on making the world a better place took the place of material worries that used to consume my thoughts. Lucas's healing took longer and was harder to handle. He finally woke up, but the memory loss left him with holes in his knowledge that were hard to fill. We talked about sad and happy things at the same time because he was trying to put together the pieces of his life. I did what I could to help him, but he never seemed to remember the whole story of what we went through together. I sometimes wondered if Lucas had seen something similar to what I had seen during my near-death experience. But he didn't have any memories to back up those moments, so he was left with bits and pieces of thoughts and feelings he couldn't fully understand. I slowly got used to a new pace in my life. I did things that made sense to me in light of what I had learned. I started meditating, writing a blog to share my thoughts and experiences, and working on projects that were meant to bring people together and help them understand each other better. After my journey, I felt like I had a reason to look for ways to make a change, no matter how small. The world kept having problems, but I looked at them with a different attitude. Now I knew that the decisions we make every day, not big actions, are what really shape the future. Every contact, even the ones that didn't seem important, was a chance to make the world kinder and more connected. The lessons I learned from my near-death experience helped me when I was having doubts or problems. I often thought about the amazing beauty and wisdom I had seen, and those memories gave me strength and motivation. The main point of my trip was to keep reminding me that every moment holds the potential to change and grow. I became more and more like the peace and clarity I had felt on the other side as time went on. It changed how I lived and dealt with the world. The spiritual insights I had learned were no longer just memories. They were now a big part of my daily life. My journey back to life did, in fact, mark the start of a new chapter marked by a deeper link to myself, others, and the bigger picture of life. Your story is very moving and important. It gets to the heart of change and how a near-death experience can change a person's life and outlook. Your story of how you went from focusing on financial success to living a life based on kindness, unity, and making a difference is both moving and inspiring. Your story shows a truth that everyone knows. Even after a terrible event or a huge problem, there is still room for growth and change. The thought that every person can change their future and the world around them by the choices and acts they make is empowering and hopeful. Spiritual insights like the ones you got and how you've used them in your life show how strong and resilient the human spirit is. It's impressive how you've taken your second chance with such purpose and determination, trying to live a life that shows what you've learned. You are still committed to living with purpose and love, and the excitement you felt about August 10th shows that your journey is far from over. It's clear that what you went through has changed you and could also motivate other people to find meaning and purpose in their own lives. People who read your story should think about their own lives and how they can make a difference for the better. It's a strong reminder of how things can change and how important it is to live with compassion and understanding. Thank you for telling this amazing story. People can relate to this story deeply, and it inspires them to look deeper into life's problems to find greater meaning and purpose.